Initials 08.
تفضل تفضل تفضل.
With that question, the things hadith about, if you fast, sincerity, and then, what you seem to be forgiven, is that all sins, major sins? Where do you stand?
Questions regarding the famous ahadith or hadiths about fasting and standing. من صام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا من قام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا ليلة القدر, etc. About غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه, your sins will be forgiven. Does that include all sins or only minor sins? The general answer is that most of the ulama of Islam, most of the scholars of Islam hold the view that this pertains to minor sins and minor sins only, and that a person must make tawbah for major sins to be removed. Okay, that's first and foremost. As far as the concept of major sin and minor sin, that's a very important issue. Very important issue. What is a major sin? What are the signs of something being a major sin? Okay, how do you remove that stain on your scale of a major sin? All right. Or if a person makes all 5 prayers, they make perfect wudu, Jumu'ah to Jumu'ah, Ramadan to Ramadan, Hajj and Umrah, and they don't make any major sins, what will take place? A person is not making the small sins, he's making all of those things. What happens? I didn't do any major sins. I continually did all of those acts of ibadah which wipe away all minor sins. What would this Ramadan do that the wudu didn't do? Understand? Because there's several different texts that state this. There are kafara, expiation for sins, as long as the major sins are what? Avoided. Such as 1 period to the next. So what about Jumu'ah? Let alone Ramadan to Ramadan. All of these different issues are part of this question. A part of this what? A part of this question. If you want details on this, then go back to our explanation of al-kaba'ir, the major sins of al-Dhahabi rahimahullah ta'ala. I believe in the introduction, we explained these different issues with regards to إن تجتنبوا كبائر ما تنهون عنه نكفر عنكم طيب إلى آخر آية والله أعلم.
This was 08 from King of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. May Allah accept your good deeds. The question says, did the Prophet make congregational PM every single night of Ramadan?
Questions from Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Did the Prophet ﷺ make qiyam in congregation every night? I don't know of that. I've never read that hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ made congregational qiyam each and every night. I've never read that myself. Wallahu a'lam.
Initials EN from Melbourne, Australia. Assalamu alaikum Mufti. Should we allow a Shi'i to join us in prayer, regardless of their beliefs?
Question said from Melbourne.
Melbourne, Australia.
Should we allow a Shi'i to join us in prayer, regardless of his beliefs? It depends, Yani. Somebody who comes into the masjid, talking crazy, speaking disrespectfully, and he says, okay, I want to pray. That's a different story. Someone who's raised upon some type of batil aqidah, and the fact that they're coming to a Sunni masjid to pray, does that mean something? Is that a step towards some type of good and light for that person? Perhaps. Perhaps. But we have to understand something, that the masajid are public places. They are not exclusive clubs for people. It's the house of Allah. And the only time which you're allowed to prohibit someone from the house of Allah is if there's something really wrong, a major violation, and a harm to the masjid, the peace, the security, the serenity of the masjid. So it could be any issue. Someone comes in arguing and fighting and debating of clear batil. It could be an issue of bad hygiene. It could be an issue of someone who has some type of signs of shirk and kufr, wearing a cross and they want to pray. You have to take that off or put it under your shirt, something. So it depends, Yani. It all what? It all depends. How do you know a person is a Shi'i? How do you know, first and foremost? How do you know? Are they coming in the masjid slandering the companion, saying Ali's the best? How do you know? If a person is in the salah, they're in the rank, and they pull out a stone and put the stone down on the carpet, you're in the salah. If you see the person put the stone down, you're the imam of the masjid. You say, Istawu, Tarasu, I'tadilu, Sawu Sufufukum, and you see him put the stone down. Say, Akhi, don't do that, please. Not in this masjid. Everyone understand this? Sometimes you have to take things into your own hands with regards to enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. There's no doubt about that. But other times, you have to just what? It's a public place. Anybody can come and pray here. It's a public place. You see what I'm saying to you? I'm trying to give them dawah, give them advice. Give them advice. Perhaps they'll become guided. Wallahu alam. Tafadhal. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
What advice would you give to a Muslim or a Muslim who have intentions of going into interracial or intercultural
Marriage? What advice for a sister who's looking forward or looking towards an interracial marriage? Well, I would say that we can't deny the fact that race is important, and it does mean something. It's mentioned in the Quran. Several verses. Allah talks about fathers, children, grandchildren. Allah talks about tribes, nations. Okay? Allah talks about arham, wombs. Alright? Allah talks about people, qawm, qawmihi, qawmihim. Ya qawmana, our people. Let alone history. Okay? And the things that have taken place and happened because of race. So it does play a role in our daily lives. But oftentimes people, they go extreme with regards to race. And they have un-Islamic values, ideals, understandings, and beliefs with regards to race. And oftentimes it's one of the hardest things for people to get rid of. And that's nothing strange. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the people would never leave these things off. Al-fakhru bil-ahsab is taking pride in my genealogy. وَالطَّعْنُ فِي الْأَنْسَابِ and attacking other people's race and their background, so on and so forth. So that's first and foremost. So it is important, but at the same time, it what? Isn't important. Number two is, with regards to race and background, I think there are many, many misconceptions regarding race and background in history among Muslims and non-Muslims, whether it be pertaining to slavery, racism, prejudice, or whatever the case may be. And oftentimes, it's nothing to do with race. But oftentimes, it's actually about class and not actually race. There are nobles and then there are peasants, commoners, aristocrats, highborn, of all races. Of all what? Of all races. So oftentimes, whether it's pertaining to certain aspects of slavery, some are, but certain aspects has nothing to do with color, but it's only pertaining to what? Class. You understand this? There is a royal African, and then there is a white trash. And their skin is clearly different. The royal African and the white trash is different. So oftentimes it's not actually about what? Race. Oftentimes it's about class and about background. Everyone understand this or not? Thirdly is, with regards to interracial marriage, if you're looking for a husband or looking for a wife of a different race, if you feel that that's a good thing for you and that's suitable for you, once you've made your mind that it doesn't bother you to have a wife from a different lineage or background, it's not going to bother your mother, it's not going to give your mother a heart attack or whatever the case, play it. Then the race is no longer a part of the equation. There's now looking at the person, who he is or who she is. Deen, first and foremost. Character, secondly. And then if you need other things, after deen and khuluq, occupation, background, lifestyle, history, knowledge, dress code, handsome, so on and so forth. So once you get past the concept of race is being acceptable or unacceptable, then there's no longer any need or any advice for anything pertaining to what? Race. Because now there's a person that I want to marry. Or I'm thinking about marrying. He's a good brother or what? Bad brother. Black or white. Whatever, yellow, red, purple, or green. Okay? So at the end of the day, that's what I'll say with regards to that question. But don't forget that when you marry someone, in most cases, you're not just marrying her, nor is she just marrying you, but you're marrying her family too. And she's marrying your family. So look towards what they think and feel about interracial marriage. She may be fine with it. The father may be fine with it. But the rest of the family, 99% may say, no, we shall not accept you. We won't accept your mixed child. We won't accept this and that, your values. So you have to be mindful of that. Are you willing to put up with that? Do you have the sabr for that? Do you have the sabr to have your child being looked down upon because they're mixed? If you don't have the sabr and you can't tolerate it, stay away from the situation. And that's because you're not just marrying a woman, but you're actually marrying her what? Her father and uncle and brother as well. Be mindful of that. Wallahu alam.
This question from London, UK. Initials SM. Is it correct to refer to non-Muslims as brothers and sisters in humanity and to have a sense of belonging to people regardless of religion? Or does this contradict al-wala wal-bara?
Questions from where?
London, UK.
Question from London. Can you refer to non-Muslims, Jews, Christians, whatever they are, as brothers and sisters in humanity and being of the same people, so on and so forth? Or does this contradict al-wala wal-bara? Tayyib. Adam alayhi salam is our forefather. We as Muslims, we know this and we believe this. Right? Hawa, or they say Eve, is our foremother. The oldest female ancestor that we have, right? We can accept this. From those people came what? رِجَالًا كِثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. Tayyib, there's many men and women spread around the earth. Those men and women, are all of them believers? Are all of them Muslims? But they all go back to Adam and Eve. So from that perspective, min hadi nahiya, from that perspective, everyone is or are what? Brothers and sisters of humanity. From that aspect, I said. From what? From that aspect. As far as if you mean that we're all on the same religion and it's, everything is all good and alhamdulillah and Jew, Christian, and Muslim, that's a different story. That's a what? That's a different story. Another very important point is, with regards to, is it permissible to say that or is it a good thing to say that? What arena are you in? What scenario are you in? And this is very important to be taken into consideration. If you're giving a talk at a college to non-Muslims, that's not the same as you giving a talk to Muslims in the masjid. If you're speaking to a Christian, it's not the same as you're speaking to someone who's a what? A Muslim. So you have to use these things which the people generally accept. What would be a means of them accepting the message of Islam more, inshallah? You saying ABC ... or you're appealing to things that they already accept and believe. We're brothers and sisters in humanity. We're all human beings. If you prick my skin, will it not hurt? Do I not bleed? Is blood not blue in my veins? That's the reality that everyone can what? Agree on. That we're all humans. We have ups, downs, we all have feelings. So it depends on who you're talking to. And the ulama of Islam, they have clearly explained that from the conditions of da'wah and conditions of a da'iyah, and yakuna basiran, is that he has to have basira. And from basira is ma'rifatu ahwal al-mad'u. You have to know the circumstances of the one whom you're calling. So if you're talking to a Christian, you have to finely tune your da'wah to that Christian. If you're talking to a Jew, you have to finely tune your da'wah to that Jew. You're talking to someone who's black and they went through the civil rights movement and they saw the oppression because of the race. You may have to finely tune certain what? And pinpoint certain emotional issues that person has. White, Irish, Italian, whatever they are. Everyone understand the point? And for us to reject and deny these realities, that's not the way. Everyone understand that? So what do you mean by that statement? What is your intention by that statement? Is there a need to make that what? Is to make that statement. As far as the people, can you say to a people who are not Muslim, who aren't Muslim, that we are of the same people? I don't see what's incorrect about that. If I'm giving a talk to, alaykum salam to Allah, black Americans, and I'm trying to call them to Islam, and I address them, we as black people in the United States have suffered. We as black people in the United States, we know injustice and tyranny. We as black people, that's a reality. Christian, Muslim, 5%er, Hebrew Israelite, at the end of the day, we're still all what?
Brothers.
I didn't say brothers. I didn't say that either. And even the Equanism, huh? Equanism. Huh? And even the Hebrew Israelite or the 5%, he may say, I'm not what? I'm not black. As he said it in the park. At the end of the day, some of the Salaf al-Salih radiallahu anhum, they used to say, كَانَ الْعِلْمُ نُقْطَةً فَكَثَرَهَا الْجُهَالِ. That back in the day, knowledge was just a small drop of ink. And the ignorant people that came and they smeared it and spread it out. They overcomplicated things. They made issues that weren't actually what, Khalid? Issues. Everyone understand this? So be mindful of that. That's my advice. Wallahu a'lam.
And this is IS from Melbourne, Australia. Are you concerned finishing with the Imam if the Imam changes at the halfway point, 10 rak'ah or 20 rak'ah? Is it better to pray the 8 rak'ah or wait for the Imam to change at 10 rak'ah?
Question from Australia. Are you considered to have finished with the Imam hatta yansarif, until he leaves and walks away? Do you get that reward even if they switch Imams at the break-off point? 10 rak'ah, 20 rak'ah, 8? That's the question?
If the Imam changes at halfway now.
Tell you, inshallah ta'ala, you get the reward bidnillahi ta'ala. They're two different people, but it's still the same prayer behind one Imam supposedly. Inshallah ta'ala. Bidnillah. You get the reward of being with just one Imam. Inshallah. As far as what's best, should you pray the 8 or should you pray the 20? It depends on what you believe. Do you believe that it is permissible to make more than 8 rak'at? Obviously, the witr as well, 3. The 2 from Isha, some narrations say 13. Al-Muhim, 11, for argument's sake. Do you believe that it's permissible to make more than 11? Don't leave the Imam and pray the 20 or the 40, however he's making. But if you feel that it's a bid'ah, it's haram to make more than 11, then obviously you can't pray behind someone based off of what you believe is what? Haram and a bid'ah. So if it's all based off of what you feel and think about the issue. So therefore, if you don't have no specific reservation about the issue and you believe that it is permissible, then pray behind the Imam, even if you prefer to only make 11. As far as if you feel that it is incorrect and invalid and transgressing the sunnah to make more than 11, then obviously don't pray behind that person more than 11. Wallahu a'lam.
Next question comes from Bristol, UK. Qasim Muhammad, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can you give some advice on how to speak to your current wife about you looking for a second wife?
Tahir. Question is from Bristol, UK. Advice about speaking to your first wife about a potential what? Dusky. Number 2, second wife. What advice can you give you? First and foremost is, before you start thinking about a second wife or even talking to her, make an evaluation of yourself as a husband. Are you a good husband? Are you a bad husband? Are you a great husband or are you a poor husband? Think about the flaws and the shortcomings that you have. Think about the strong points that you do have, alhamdulillah. And no matter what the case, if the woman that you're married to is uncomfortable with having a co-wife, she does not want to have a second wife for whatever reason. She's extremely jealous. She believes that was specific to the Prophet. That's outdated in 2019. Whatever her reason is, if she's uncomfortable with it, she's going to be uncomfortable with it. Bottom line. There's no explanation, there's no feelings, there's no hikmah that you can use to make her comfortable with something she's uncomfortable with. However, you can minimize the problems. Everyone understand this? You can do what? Harun? You can minimize it. So for argument's sake, there's a sister, you've been married to her for 10 years or 5 years, however long you've been married to her. And she says no second wife, period. Okay, no problem. You talk about getting a second wife, or you get a second wife and you tell her whatever the scenario is, and you're a good husband, you have good deen, you pray, you fast, you give zakah, you took her on hajj, you spend your wealth on her, you protect her, you give her her rights. You're a good husband, alhamdulillah, you try to do a good thing, she's going to have a problem with it. But how much can she actually say? How much what? I'm jealous, this is not fair, you got to ask my permission, blah, 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 blah. But she won't start tearing gaping holes in you. I pay the rent. I pay the car note. This is my house, my apartment. You don't wake up to pray. You don't do this. You didn't take me on hajj. Those are major problems that she's going to what? No doubt about it. And she's going to say what? Gaping holes. She's going to shred you apart. But if you're a good husband, striving to be a great husband, then you can do what? You can minimize it. Or you may be able to neutralize her argument. You have no beef with me getting a second wife. I give you everything that you need and want, except for your jealousy. And your jealousy that you feel with me being another woman is a natural feeling. I'm not in charge of that, but that's something that Allah Azza wa Jalla has tested you with. Period. I give you your haqq, I give you your time, your affection, this and that. I try my best as a husband. But you can't make that solid argument if you're a what? A poor husband who barely spends time, who barely gives money, who barely teaches her, who barely gives her her rights, who barely spends time with her. Everyone understand this or not? So before you talk about taking on a second wife and explaining to the first wife, you have to make sure that you yourself are trying to be a good husband. You don't have to be a perfect husband because perfection is for Allah. But what did the poet say? Striving what? For perfection. Then after that, inshallah ta'ala, bidnillah, just be upfront and be open with it. I want to get married. Or I got married. Or I'm getting married. There are many misconceptions that many people have regarding the second wife. Your first wife has to give you permission. Or you can, sister, she said today, wallahi, she said this today in the masjid, if the brother got married to someone who was a widow or sick or old, I would understand. But what more do you need besides me? You have all of these different misconceptions with regards to polygamy or polygyny. And oftentimes these misconceptions are based off of weak iman, jealousy, ignorance, full cupness, and oftentimes just following and imitating the kuffar. And we're not even realizing how much we've been influenced by the kuffar. Rather, stop that. Pause that. We haven't been influenced by the kuffar. The asl is the thought and the philosophy of who? Of the kuffar. How much has the Quran and Sunnah influenced us? Because we come from a kafir country and kafir culture. So that's the default. How much of it have we washed away and removed and replaced with what? Kutub Sitta. Everyone understand this? Because that's not the default coming from the United States. The default is happily ever after. You ride off in the sun in the sunset on a white horse. Everyone understand this? The prince and the princess. That's the default. Spending time, sharing a Sunday together, ice cream, a float, a root beer. Everyone understand this? One straw.
Okay.
Never what?
Okay.
Khalid, never what? It's never two straws in the movie, or three or four. So the default is what? The default is what? Is monogamy. That's the default. So you as a Muslim, if you're trying to practice the deen, if you're trying to be a Muslim in theory and in practice, you have to get rid of all of that stuff and replace it with the what? The correct philosophy of Quran and Sunnah. I would understand this? So when you have these different discussions and these talks, you see how influenced the people are towards this or towards that. It comes out. Who said that's a condition for your husband and a second wife, that the woman has to be able to? Who said that? Who said that it has to be a condition that you have to be old and your children are in college? Who said that? So we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to increase us in the proper understanding and to make us of those who practice the deen properly. I mean.
Question, initials MS from London, UK. Could a follower of a madhab in which the basis of the view of the madhab is a weak hadith not argue that the weakness in the hadith may have come later down the chain and hence was received authentically by their imam, hence making it a valid opinion even if the hadith is weak?
Where's the question from?
London, UK.
This will be our last question that we'll take tonight, inshallah. We've run out of time, to be honest. The summary of the question is, someone who follows a madhab, or who studies a madhab, and there's a hadith for a fiqh opinion that some ulama say is weak. But in defense of our imam, Malik or Abu Hanifa or whoever, he accepted the hadith before it reached that level in which there's a weak narrator, etc. Can that argument be made? No, it cannot. And yes, it can. The no part is that if there is a hadith that has an authentic chain, it's going to be sahih before it gets to a weak person if it was put in a book, if it was narrated. So how many people between Malik and the Prophet ﷺ? How many people between Ahmed and the Prophet ﷺ? If we have a hadith in which there are only 3 narrators, including the Sahabi, between Imam Ahmed and the Messenger of Allah, And then later on we have another scholar who collects the hadith, and there are 5 people in the chain of narration. And the 4th person is weak. There's no need to even depend upon that chain of narration with 5 people. Because we have the what? The thulathi. We have the chain in which there are only 3 authentic, trustworthy narrators. But it was khurrij al-hadith. The hadith was actually found in a what? In a book. Everyone understand this? So where is Abu Hanifa getting this hadith from? Or Ahmad or whoever the imam is. Where's he getting the hadith from? Later on it became weak, it's one thing. But that does not exist in the sciences of hadith. Because once the hadith is transmitted, and it comes from the messenger, from the sahabi, from the tabi'i, then it goes to a source. If it's found authentic, then it's authentic. Regardless of what took place, what? After on. So that's the no part. Everyone understand this? Another very important point is that just because a hadith is weak to one scholar, doesn't mean that it's weak to the next scholar. The ulama of Islam differ on hadith science just like they differ on fiqh. Point number 3 is that just because the hadith is weak in its isnad, it doesn't mean that it's weak in its matan. And just because the isnad is seemingly authentic doesn't mean that the matan is what? Authentic. There are many reasons why hadith could be considered da'if. Point number 4 is just because the hadith is weak, it doesn't mean that hadith has a bad meaning and thus useless. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he made his famous iconic statement, al-hadith al-da'if khayrun min ra'i rijal. He says a weak hadith is better than the opinion of men. A weak hadith is better than the opinions of men. And the ulama of Islam, such as Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, they give 2 main interpretations of this statement of Imam Ahmad. What does he mean? Does he mean al-hadith al-da'if, the hadith which is actually missing one of the conditions of an authentic hadith? Or does he mean al-hadith al-hasan, which has relative weakness in it? So some ulama, they say that Imam Ahmad, from time to time, and others, they may take a hadith which they consider to be da'if, and they may base their opinion off of that hadith. But there are other things that support that hadith, such as what some of the Sahaba did, such as what some of the Tabi'een did, Ahmad al-Madina, Qiyas. There are many different principles. So we have to understand that I'm going to end this part of the question with this, is that this part of the answer like this, is that what? Usul al-fiqh is a science. And there are many different proofs and evidences that the scholars use to get rulings. The Quran, of course, in the forefront. The hadith in the what? The forefront. Al-ijma', consensus in the what? In the forefront. But there are other things that they use as proofs and evidences that aren't hadiths, such as qiyas, such as Ahmad al-Madina, such as Shar'u man qablana, such as Saddu dhari'ah. There are many sources that they have to come up with a what? With a ruling. Everyone understand this? With a what? With a ruling. Everyone understand this? So therefore, even if the hadith is da'if, it doesn't mean that's the only thing that they're using to prove their fiqh view. The hadith could be weak, and it also goes along with the principles. The hadith could be weak, and it goes along with qiyas. The hadith could be weak, but it was well known, such as the middle of Sha'ban. Many scholars, they did it. They prayed at night. They did certain things. Not saying that that's my opinion, but I'm trying to make a point. Everyone understand this? As far as the yes part of the answer, then some hadiths could be collected later on in later books with a weak chain. But in the earlier books, there's a what? An authentic chain. All right? You won't know none of these answers properly unless you yourself learn Arabic and study properly and go to the authentic sources and actually read what Abu Hanifa said. And actually read what was Imam Malik's method. How did Imam Ahmed deduce rulings? How did the Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala look at what the Sahaba said and did? You have to be a student of knowledge if you want to get to the bottom of these what? Of these issues in which there's a great deal of confusion in 2019. Everything Abu Hanifa said is bid'ah. Nothing Abu Hanifa said is wrong or bid'ah. Everything Imam Ahmed said is correct. Everything Imam Malik is confusion. What's the cure and the solution to the confusion? Except for you yourself cutting out the middlemen, seeking the knowledge yourself, and reading it yourself. And that's why we always implore the people to read the books of the earlier generations. That way you yourself can go back to the original source and actually see what is the actual statement of this Imam regarding this issue. What was his proof? Because the Hanafis in the 8th century, they may use the da'if hadith that Abu Hanifa never ever used. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he may not even spoke on this issue. But the Hanbalis later on, they what? Spoke on the issue. So that's the madhab, but that doesn't mean that's the actual qawl of who? Ahmed. وهكذا. So you have to scratch beneath the surface. And you can't do that unless you yourself are the one who's actually what? Doing the scratching. Huh? Wallahu alam. Jazakumullah.